Good evening, everyone. My name is Moises Esparza. I'm the exhibitions manager for the San Diego Latino Film Festival. Thank you so much for joining us for our 27th edition, brought to you virtually via the Eventive platform. Our festival runs through September 27th, so we still have a couple days left to go, filled with amazing movies. So continue tuning in, watching films, and recommending our program to friends. We've had to make some obvious evolutions in the way we screen movies. So I just want to thank everyone from viewers to filmmakers for allowing us to screen the films virtually. It's a changing landscape, but we're all trying to adapt to it. This Q&A can be as interactive as you want it to be. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can leave comments and I'll be able to bring them on screen. Feel free to leave comments or questions for our guests. And also, if you're using Eventive, you can also chat comments or questions, and I'll just copy and paste them onto the screen here. The great thing about this virtual edition is that I've been able to interact with more filmmakers than ever. And for today's post-screening discussion of SENECA, it's no different. I'm going to introduce our special guests now. We have director Jason Chayette. Hello, Jason.
Hey, Moises, how are you? Good to be here.
And I'm going to bring Armando on screen. Hi, Armando. How are you?
How you doing, man?
Good, good. Beyond being the director, Jason's also the co-writer and producer. And Armando is not just the actor, he's also a producer as well and a co-writer. So multi-hyphenates here. Thank you for joining us today.
It's great to be here.
Hopefully we're not keeping you up too late. I know it's an intense time difference.
It's only it's great. It's exactly. we're hitting the, Armando and I are hitting the clubs after this.
Oh, perfect. Very exciting.
The COVID clubs.
Yeah, there's a lot of those open.
No clubs in New York, as you know.
Yeah, we're not encouraging people to go clubbing at all.
Definitely not.
Yeah, welcome to the late hour at the SDLFF Film Festival, where we recommend terrible choices.
I'm in no way endorsing any behavior like that.
Yes, yes. Well, let's start talking about SENECA. If we can start at the beginning, I immediately fascinated by the opening scene, which in a way repeats at the end of the film, but maybe in more complete form. Opens on Lincoln Center, then goes into what we don't know if it's a dream, reality, flashback, a conversation between David Seneca, the protagonist, played by Armando, and Priest, played by Tony Plana. Not sure what the discussion is when you first enter the conversation, but all you know, the theme is adventure. That's the dialogue piece that we get there. And then Seneca wakes up. So what's clear there is you have a bit of a dream moment, dreamscape. Then the scene repeats again at the end in full form. And I guess what I should mention about the beginning scene is that in a way the priest leaves Seneca behind, trailing behind, and we get a more realized conversation at the end. Both of you, I'm interested in hearing about the decision to kind of bookend the film in this way.
Sure. I mean, I wish I had you as a dramaturg like 3 years ago to sort of talk us through all of that. That was really eloquent the way you put it. Thank you. I mean, I think the device came in, I think, a little bit later in the process. It was Armando's idea to sort of, structure the film with these little bits and keep coming back to it. And I think the idea with it is that you not only is the audience perceiving that conversation in a certain way at the beginning and in a very different way at the end, so is Seneca. Of course, what you find out at the end is that the movie's actually starting at the end and that he's already made this realization. But I thought it was interesting to juxtapose, this sort of iconic New York landmark shot with this beautiful dreamy kind of walk and talk in Puerto Rico, and then kind of just land him in his current reality, which is basically living in, I mean, in what in Manhattan we would call a very nice apartment, but it is essentially like a ground floor apartment in a brownstone, essentially a cave, and he's sleeping on a couch. And so I thought contrasting and juxtaposing those images at the beginning would hopefully set up where we were going to go, but at the same time create this arc for him.
Fantastic, yeah. Armando, anything else to add?
There's also, Moises, there's also this, his dream at the beginning, the movie in a way, or what we want you to think is that his dream is his own fame, right? His own success. And then obviously the payoff is that, in fact, it's someone else's success. And that's good enough.
Yeah.
You know, that it doesn't need to be his success for him to win, in a way.
Yeah, and I guess in the opening, you wouldn't know that until you begin watching the film, but one scene obviously takes place in New York City, the other one in Puerto Rico. So you introduce, I guess, the two settings of the film from the get-go, which kind of sets everything up. Where did the idea come from to make sort of Puerto Rico's turmoil with Hurricane Maria such a internal part of the protagonist's character, who is also protagonist personality, who is also Puerto Rican?
So that idea actually, it's interesting because most of the movie was written before the hurricane,
right?
And that was really kind of the genesis of the entire writing process. I mean, we wanted a mirror image between a man who's lost, and then finds himself because of losing himself. Right. So it's also sort of the idea of Seneca, the Roman philosopher, where you have to lose everything in order to really get to know yourself. And so he's going through it at the same time that the island is going through it. And the island has really been going through it for a long, long time. The hurricane was really just kind of a kick in the mouth when the island is already down. You know, so that idea came pretty early on, that we wanted this mirror image to happen. And one thing that was strangely fortuitous is that the hurricane brought about exactly what I kind of predicted, which is a sort of resilience and a, I don't know, I guess a positive, there's something positive that comes out of disaster. And that's something that I think is worth meditating on.
Thank you. Jason, did you have anything to add?
No, I mean, I think Armando, as usual, nails it, and I think you know, he puts it really well. You know, for me to, you know, Armando and I are really close, not only professionally and creatively, but personally, and to see, you know how he was grappling with that and what was going on back there, and a place that I've come to, even though I'm not from there, obviously, a place that I've come to know and love. You know, it was really meaningful for me to be a part of that and explore that idea with him.
Yeah, thank you. Something that runs throughout the film are racist microaggressions, and sometimes not even microaggressions, just purely aggressive experiences.
Yeah.
Armando, the incorporation of that, is that based on personal experiences as an actor working, or was this just more of a commentary on racist microaggressions that Latinos suffer through when they don't look, I guess, or sound like the way Latinos are supposedly supposed to sound or look like?
I mean, it's both, I guess. It's definitely based on my experience as an actor and just as a person. I unfortunately am sometimes privy, because of the way I look, to a lot of things that probably a lot of people aren't privy to. We could get into that, but those would be long and detailed stories. But yeah, it's both a commentary and a reality. I mean, I've certainly, I think one person wrote about the film and said, I just don't think that it's. And by the way, this was a white reviewer. That it's realistic, for somebody to tell him what he hears, that sort of sends him off on this journey. Where someone tells him in front of his daughter to speak English and to build a wall, and that's actually like exactly that happened to me verbatim. So it's both. It's both. I really like the more subtle stuff because I just find those experiences so bizarre and neat to try and capture. The sort of the awkwardness of people that are very well intentioned, and Democrats and Bernie supporters, and and they still just say stuff that's kind of outrageous, or just ignorant. So we tried to capture both. We tried to capture the subtle and the brutal.
Yeah. That's a funny thing for that writer, I guess, to pick on as unrealistic when there's so many films with gaping plot holes that are less. I don't know. I don't know. That's just shocking. That seems to be, in a way, the catalyst of a lot of momentum in the film. And you see,
to be fair, it's not like this happened to me in Wisconsin, or in Oklahoma. Like, this happened to me around the corner here. We actually shot that scene exactly where it happened.
At the coffee shop?
We're at the cafe.
Yeah.
And the guy tells me to, go speak the native language and all this stuff. That happened to me. It wasn't, I mean, obviously the circumstances were different or whatever. They're dramatized differently, but someone told me that in that cafe in Queens, like, I live in a neighborhood that's like 95% Hispanic, and someone told me that. So it is what it is, to borrow from, a very popular guy.
How did your co-writing partnership begin, and how did you both? I guess, what's the collaborative process like for both of you in writing a film? What does that look like?
I mean, Armando and I actually, ironically, the movie's on HBO now. Armando and I met working for HBO like 18 years ago, right? I think it's been that long. When HBO, I was doing some development stuff for them and doing a little bit of directing and working with new writers. And Armando was a great young actor in New York. And he was involved in it, and we met through that, and became friends and worked on a lot of things off and on together. We did another film in Puerto Rico about 10 years ago, a short. Armando's done other stuff for me, and we've been writing things. And we wrote another project that ended up, I'm going to say has not yet been made, but it's a much bigger budget. We're not putting that one away forever. And then we landed on this idea. Armando sent me, like 3 years ago, a little video about Seneca, the Roman philosopher, and the last name stuck because it was the initial inspiration, and for some of the imagery, some of the first images of the film that were written, like the air mattress was the first thing that was written, and the last shot of the movie was the second thing that was written. And then it's just, we're kind of a hive mind. It's weird. I don't know how this happened on some level, but it happened, and we complement each other, and our brains work together but also work differently, and we do a bunch of structuring, and then he fills it in a lot, and then we rewrite, and or I puke some crap and he makes it better, and it's just a lot of a lot of that, and we're starting on new projects now, so it's a lot of the same stuff where we're kind of like puking, and then we'll switch, not literally puking, like creatively puking. Sorry, I should be clear. We're not vomiting on each other. But and then we'll kind of flip and play different roles with it. So we kind of see where it goes. And for me on this project, like I have to trust. I mean, I trust Armando with almost with anything. But like I trust him implicitly on making sure it's authentic. The Puerto Rican aspect of it's authentic, and that was really, really important to us, and obviously critically important to him. And so I'm deferring on all of that. But at the same time, when he's talking about, like, I've seen a lot of, I haven't experienced them, but I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen to a lot of actors. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff just said in supposedly incredibly progressive circles, right? And in casting rooms. And I've heard people say things, and I'm like, what is, and I also teach, like I hear people say things sometimes, and I'm like, what are you saying? What is wrong with you, right?
Oh, wow.
And I think if more people can sort of call this stuff out, nobody's perfect, but if you can get more people to call this stuff out, I think it makes a big difference. Sorry, I know we were talking about the writing process, but swinging back to that.
Anything to add, Armando?
Amen.
You receive the vomit and form it.
Yeah.
And I bathe in the vomit.
You bathe in the vomit.
Yeah.
Well, beyond being authentic, perhaps to the experiences of a Puerto Rican living in New York, the film also touches base on what it's like for a working actor in New York who may not obviously have a certain look, and we have Seneca's maybe protege come into play and create a little bit of friction. Tell me a little bit more about the development of that dynamic and what you were trying to, I guess, convey with that dynamic.
I mean, there's a lot to that dynamic. Of course we tried to find the sort of the coolest, easiest going, most likable dude that we could find. And Moises Acevedo came along, the actor, and he just, he wore a skirt to our premiere, and he managed to make it look cool. Like,
he pulled it off completely.
Yeah, like without a problem. He showed up at another. I don't know if you remember this one, Jason. He showed up at another premiere where he had like an astronaut jacket.
Oh yeah, I know. I have a picture of me trying to wear it. It was very exciting. I was thrilled he let me.
Anyway, we wanted that element of it, which I think Moises brings effortlessly to the role of just like this 20-something dude that's just that has this cool thing, whereas the other character is like trying to be cool, like holding the door for the like cute girls at the ATM, and they're like, "Thank you, sir." But also, and perhaps more importantly, I wanted to. A lot of that character is me, because I remember being that age and having some success and sort of just having that feeling that feeling that Seneca has when you see him in that Puerto Rico flashback of like I'm gonna take over the world. I'm the world is mine. And of course that works, I think, in a very in a wonderful way to sort of resaltar, to
highlight. Yeah.
Thank you. To highlight those things about Seneca, that where he feels lesser than, or he feels like he's lost it. Jason, you got anything?
Yeah. I mean, I think that really there's a lot of threads in the movie. It's sort of a purposely thematically dense film. whether people think that works is up to them, of course. But we kind of were like, we're going to have a really weird structure, and we're going to pack this with a lot of themes. And there's the identity thing, but it's identity in a lot of different ways. It's an identity as an artist, identity as a father, identity as obviously as a Puerto Rican, but also identity professionally, in terms of what is asking this question of what is success. Is success what you thought it meant when someone said something to you when you were 18 and you had to do that, or you were a failure, or is success something that evolves along the way? And I think a big thing for me in the movie, and also this came, I think a lot of it I'm really connected to as a teacher, is the idea that teaching is success. And I think there's kind of a disdain for teaching societally, and I think it's really important that we look at that in a different way, and that, when you have someone that you've taught, or you mentor someone to any kind of success in life, that's a really huge thing, and something that you should be able to define as success, and that people should look to, whether it's mentoring a protege, like Pedro in the movie, or even being a mentor to your children, which I think is, probably the most, at least for me, the most important thing that a person can do.
And one last thing I would add, Moises, is that, and it's something that unfortunately I'm going through right now, the definition of success when faced with death, it's just a whole different ballgame.
That's right.
And you realize a lot of things in a very visceral way, and I think that's also part of that's part of what the character is going through. He's faced with his father's death, which happened years ago, and he's still somehow, it's lingering. Something about it just keeps eating at him. And then obviously Father Ruben, and his imminent death, makes the character have to go through some sort of reckoning, and that Puerto Rico is going through a death, right, in its own way. So there has to be a reckoning, a sort of a re-examining of everything, of his parenthood, of his career, his all these things, because when you're faced with something that intense, a lot of things fall off, right? A lot of the unimportant stuff really sort of melts off, and you're left with something way more, algo más poderoso, algo mucho más imposible de definir, ¿no?
Do you think the conversation that between Father Ruben and Seneca is more of a teachable moment or teaching moment than maybe part of this reckoning? Because I think that conversation's punctuated by, I guess, the admission to a lie, which I thought was really interesting, with Father Ruben's hand, or the reason it was he was injured. Is Seneca also part of like bigger lies or deceit to himself, maybe? Or I guess I want to understand that maybe anecdote in the context of perhaps what you're talking about, a reckoning, maybe.
Moises, I'm so glad you bring that up, because I don't think anyone's ever asked.
That's a great catch.
And man, I think that's a complicated question, and it's something that I grappled with the script. But yeah, I think it's the admission of somebody that, look, life isn't what you think it is, and God, and this is a priest talking. God is not, all these parables that Jesus has of the prodigal son, I'm clearly like I'm a Jesuit sort of educated kid. I went through like all this Jesuit education as a kid, which obviously shows in the movie. But like the story of I don't know, if you remember the laborers that some of them work all day and then some of them work just the last hour of the day and they get paid the same.
Mhm.
And both of those stories elicit a sort of call for justice, right? So the other son, the son that's not the prodigal son, is going, but what the fuck? Like I've done everything right. I'm the good guy. Like why? How come you're throwing a party for the other son? That's this wayward son. Same thing with the workers, right? It's the story of why. How come the guy that worked 1 hour is getting paid the same as the guy that worked the entire day, that got up at 6 a.m? And it's because the ways of God are just mysterious. And it's not about justice, it's about mercy. It's about something else. It's not human. And I think that's a very long way of saying that I think Reuben's admission is in a way that it's not what you think it is, and maybe it's not what you thought that I meant, but everything's going to be fine is also what he says.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
picking up and also, I think David perceives Reuben as this infallible character, and I think the vulnerability and Reuben confessing that he has this, what he perceives for himself is this horrible thing that he did and this terrible mistake that he made and this great bad bucket of shame that he's had in his life forever, and sort of opening up about that, I think, is really a critical turning point for Reuben in the last months of his life, but also for David when he realizes it. And Armando at the end there, that was why I jumped in. It was, Armando's picking up on Reuben's last line, which is everything's going to be great. Todo va a ser bien. And that was almost the title of the movie. Like we went, it was a little bit too much of a mouthful. We went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth about it, and even tried to imagine it on a poster. But that idea is that at 18, he's hearing that phrase and going, "Oh, right, it's going to be great because I'm going to be in a movie with Pacino and buy my dad a Cadillac." And at the end, he's standing in front of Lincoln Center, going, "Like you idiot! If you'd only known that you were going to have this amazing kid and this incredible life and all these opportunities and get to take care of a kid like Pedro and get him somewhere really cool, then you would know that's great. That's the definition of great." And I think it's just being able to look at that with hindsight. There's a little moment at the beginning of the movie that I love that was almost a happy accident, but because I edited the movie, I also, because I'm a control freak, I also got to make sure it was in there. So this little moment when Armando is looking at Lincoln Center and he just turns back as if he's looking back at his past. And that's the moment that we cut to the walk and talk. And I think it happened just by accident as we were shooting that second unit stuff. But it's the kind of moment that when you see it in dailies, you go, "Oh my God, I'd love to say we planned that on set, but I was like, oh my God, that's great. We got to do that." And then that sort of set the tone for how to launch into those walk and talks.
Wow. Going back to the scene with Father Reuben and Seneca when he's bandaging, like kind of treating his wounds or a little bit. Was that like a very just talked about or discussed framing or how the scene was set up? Because I found it really just incredibly effective and really tender. And there was obviously like a real sense of brotherhood. So I'm wondering about maybe the framing of that scene and what you talked
of the whole scene or just of that moment?
Oh, I guess the whole scene.
Right.
Yeah, you can talk about the whole scene.
There's 27 setups in that scene. The first master that we shot was 12 and a half minutes long. I mean, Armando and Tony you could tell that we're all reformed theater people when you have a dialogue scene that long, right? And Armando and Tony just crushed it over and over and over again. But we also had this amazing but very small crew in Puerto Rico. We didn't have a lot of room. We were racing the light and trying to match the sunlight with one light thing through the window all day.
We also had my
Armando's amazing aunt TT.
We also had my aunt walking into and out of the shot constantly, trying to feed the birds and shit. We were like, Get
Yeah,
out of
she was like walking in front of the light by accident. We were like, TT. But she's
my
amazing.
God.
She's the greatest. And so, I mean, there was a lot of coverage and we tried to carry it through as much as possible, but we also got to the point where we were like, literally, there's a mirror on one side of the room. Like, we can't, we can't get every position that we want. So, it took a long time. And they were, these two, I mean, these guys are such great actors and great people. Like, they really just pushed through and pushed through and pushed through. And the crew was also really, really great with limited resources. I mean, I think, look, deep breath, like what informs that scene more than anything is not the filmmaking. It's that, it's actually having that experience in real life. And one of the things that, Armando and I bonded early over this is, his Father Golden, who was the inspiration for Father Ruben, and my father both had the same cancer. And they both had multiple myeloma. And when we were talking about that, Armando had already been through that when my father was diagnosed. And then I spent, the next year, watching my father go through that, that just, being in the room for that experience, and Armando's had that experience, that's just something where, I think every frame of that scene is informed by that experience at some level, from the acting to the writing to the spatial relation between them to the camera work. So, and certainly to the tempo of the scene, which is, kind of, it's not a 12.5-minute scene anymore, but it's still pretty deliberate,
Right.
And takes its time.
Well, Marta, did you want to add anything, or?
No, I
Jason,
think that's dead on. I mean, I can't really speak to the framing of it, but because that's more Jason's job. But in terms of the scene itself, I mean, I was recalling the other day, someone was asking me about it, and I said, one moment that I love in that scene, just as a quick story, is when he's covering himself up, and my character says, "Listen, take that shit off. Like, what are you doing?" And he said, "No, because I'm, I just don't look good." And he convinces him to, and then finally he takes it off, and there's these welts on him, that are just, and that's a real moment that I experienced with my mentor. Except it was worse, like we couldn't even shoot the sort of the proper thing that I had written for it, Jason. I don't know if you remember what it was.
I remember, because you've always been really honest with me, and you told me as soon as I was like, okay, that's going to be an awful thing to watch. Yeah.
The reality is actually much more brutal than what you even see, So that's all we were trying to go for. We were trying to sort of capture that. We were trying to capture that sort of that moment, which is a very uncomfortable and muy desagradable, muy no es algo que it's not something that you want to live through, but there it is.
And then immediately following that scene, we have this tremendous act of kindness from David, who hands over, I guess, it's really his family home to the individual who's rebuilding his home. Maybe, I guess, a constant theme that I get from the film is beyond brotherhood is just being kind. I know it's cheesy as that sounds. Acts of kindness lead to some sort of like catharsis, perhaps. But I guess maybe tell me about that scene a little bit, and what the intent was there.
Jason, I'll let you answer, but Moises, I'm glad you got the film.
It's really nice to talk to someone who gets the film. And a lot of people have, but it's really cool. I mean, I think it's giving. I think it's giving back, and I think there's a moment in that scene that I think is probably the most interesting moment to me. Which is when he's saying, we need people to stay. Don't come here and bring me some groceries, implying don't come here and bring me some groceries and go back to New York.
Right.
And I think that's a really. I mean, Armando wrote that moment. I thought it was, as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's a really great moment where a guy is just being really honest and I think in a really necessary way of anybody in that situation where, like, we're tired of being abandoned. We're you can't just pretend to help. You can't just show up and throw paper towels. Sorry to bring that up, but and then go back. And I thought that was a really important moment. I love the moment. I think the playing of the moment for Luis Gonzaga and Armando is really, really nice because, I think in the wrong hands that doesn't work. And I just thought it was really important to get that moment in there.
Thank you. Well, we've crossed over the 35-minute mark.
Oh, okay.
We should let Armando get to that soon. I guess maybe before we sign off, just maybe talk a little bit about where people can find the film now if they happen to stumble into this conversation and they're like, what are these guys talking about? Where can they find Seneca?
Seneca is exclusively on, aside from film festivals, exclusively on HBO Max, and they can watch it anytime they want. It also runs frequently on HBO Latino. It's available on HBO On Demand. But you can always get on HBO Max, which is a great platform, and it's going to be there for some time and available. And we'd love for people to check it out and spread the word. And if you like the movie, you love the movie, go on IMDb and give it a rating, because that stuff does help for like international sales and things like that. Yeah, I think that's it, right? Mondo, did I miss anywhere else they can see I don't think there's anywhere else they can see the film.
I hope not.
Exactly.
Well, Jason, Armando, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for being so flexible with the format of exhibition. I know it's not the intended format of exhibition, but I'm super appreciative of your flexibility and understanding, and all the best to both of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Moises. You too. Good luck. Keep up the good work. Thank you for everything you're doing.
See ya. Bye-bye.